I'm Wyatt Cash at Scoop News Group, and we're here with Amanda Fennell, Chief Security Officer at Relativity. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about it.
Well, let me start by asking, what does IT modernization look like and mean in government in 2021?
I will say that it's probably the most obvious thing is that we've moved into a world of so much data, right? And when there's so much more data, we have to start figuring out how to collect all of that data in secure fashions, host all of it securely, et cetera. So especially in like this remote environment, lots of data out there. So I believe a big focus here for 2021 and beyond is really about not just all of those secure fashions, but also embracing the data-driven decision making. You have a ton of data, and then what? And I think you need to make some great decisions with it. So I feel like that's probably a big focus. And then governments are just collecting such an abundant amount of data every day. And we need to be able to have that accurate analysis and hopefully use some AI machine learning with it, which I know can be buzzwordy, but they're there for a reason. We want to make smarter decisions more efficiently and quickly. And I think that's what's really driving a lot of agencies these days with IT modernization.
Well, in your experience working with government agencies, how did the pandemic affect the need to modernize more rapidly?
Well, I don't think many agencies were ready. I'm from DC, so like I'm kind of used to the environment. And so I don't know that everyone was really ready for something like that to happen at such a large scale, that all of a sudden we had no access to everything. And not only no access, but you needed to do it long-term distributed workforce. So I think the pandemic just forced agencies to move a lot of their investment to cloud and collaboration tools. How do you keep that remote work environment working on a large scale? You have to be able to keep in touch in a secure fashion and keep going. So that's probably one thing that was a big migration. And then this large upfront expense that probably happened for a lot of people was about that IT of the maintenance of like legacy systems. A lot of things that were working just good enough before had to be upgraded. So I think a lot of people in the IT realm, they had to go through that like movement of a lot of evolution the first few months of COVID. I feel like a lot of people have gotten it all worked out and a lot of the kinks now, but it's just the time when security became the most crucial, that everything had to be up to date, patched, consistently available, and so on. And I think that the government really latched onto it and they've run with it.
Well, I'm looking a little bit ahead now. What major priorities stand out to you for modernization in government today?
I hate to say cloud adoption because we're a cloud company as well, right? So it's hard to not mention that though. And I think when you go to those fundamentals of security about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the cloud offers that. And so I think as long as you've got everything compliant and in accordance with what the needs are for the government, with FedRAMP and so on, you've got a lot of cloud adoption. And I think that's going to continue even post-pandemic. It's really about that versatility, usability, and scalability that they need to have, and that's going to continue. So I think that's one. I mentioned that AI and ML, and there's a reason for it. There's so much data, we've got to do something with that data. I think that's going to continue. Security, thankfully for me, is probably always going to be a really big deal. As you have larger amounts of data, you have larger amounts of risk that you have to secure and deal with. So that in terms of that growing span, you have to be prepared for it. And the real solution for a lot of this would be like that end-to-end solution, being able to offer fewer resources to maintain what they're looking for. And, we have that obviously Relativity one, government, we've got that solution of like every part of the EDRM for e-discovery, those stages. And that's because we're trying to be holistic. We don't want people to grab data from one place, move it to here, and have to deal with all the chain of custody and so on. Just one place that you would manage those FOIA requests and so on. So I think it's really about that streamlining the process as much as possible and less movement with your data, just like the one migration and the one accessibility.
Well, finally, after agencies get on the other side of their current modernization efforts, what comes next?
That's always the question that we're all trying to use, that magic 8-ball is like, well, what next? What next? What do we plan for? Not 1 year or 3 years, but 5 or 10 years. I believe that there's not a real clear cut after. So I think it's kind of merged around, and it's just going to continue to evolve iteratively. So the real answer here for me is that I just think it's going to be technology continuing to have that modernization, definitely more intuitive. I think we've got a lot of great tools out there, not always intuitive. And especially for the government sector, it's got to be seamless collaboration with the things that are already in place. So I think for what is after for the world is one thing, what is after for the government, I hope it's streamlined, more intuitive, more accessible, better for a user experience for people who work there.
Well, Amanda Fennell, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of your insights on IT modernization with our audience.
Thank you so much for having me.